And that is our next guest, Mark Esper, former Secretary of Defense in President Trump's first administration. Mr. Secretary, thank you very much for joining us on the weekend.
Good morning. Good to be with you all.
You know, you heard me read the introduction, and let me just read to the president yesterday canceled the strikes on Iran using language that threatened the country, threatened the people of that country, while at the same time pulling away from yet another threatened escalation in the war. As a former Secretary of Defense, could you bring us inside the department and what this on-again, off-again threats in a conflict like this, the impact that has on the men and women of the armed forces who are following through on the president's orders or not?
Well, it's a good question, Jonathan. Of course, most of the planning and execution, of course, happens through the combatant command. In this case, it would be Central Command. And so the challenge they have, of course, is managing everything from their combat patrols with aircraft and ships to managing their munition stockpiles, which has been a topic of discussion for quite some time now. They have to keep a constant eye on the threats, work with allies and partners, and they have to navigate this as the president navigates himself through one approach to another. So it's a challenging environment to begin with, and it can be made even more challenging as we deal in this type of unpredictability of what may be next and what's coming down the road. How does this end? What does success look like? As General David Petraeus famously asked during the Iraq surge or prior to the Iraq surge. So those are all important questions that the military commanders, I'm sure, are asking these days.
As someone who served in his first cabinet, are you surprised by the President Trump we are seeing now compared to the one you dealt with in the first term?
No, I don't think we should be. And I wrote about this on my memoir. You know, presidents evolve over time, and certainly during their first term, if it's a two-term administration. And I saw that happening from when I'd entered in 2017 as Secretary of the Army through when I left in 2020 as Secretary of Defense. And during the last year of President Trump's tenure, which was a tough one, right? Because we had protests, we had COVID, we had all kinds of things going on. You saw more of that, of what you're seeing today than you did in the first year. And I said this, I wrote about this in my book, that I thought that the last year of the first Trump administration would look very similar to the first year of the second Trump administration. And that's proven to be true.
Secretary Esper, one of the things that for us as reporters is very different about this second term is that in the first term, there were the John Kellys, there were the Mark Espers, people who would sit down with the president and tell him the ground truth about decisions that were coming. Honestly, it seemed like he, in many instances, pulled back after those conversations. The difference now seems to be that either he's not listening when that's happening, which according to a lot of reporting, it seems like this not happening. When you think about a cabinet, an administration where folks don't appear to be able to tell the president, and he doesn't seem to accept all of the truth when making decisions about war and peace, what's your reaction to that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And of course, presidents choose cabinets for different reasons. Famously, Lincoln had his cabinet of rivals. Other presidents have close political friends they've been with for years. I'd say in the first administration, he chose more traditional cabinet members, if you will. And I think, to your point, I think he kept an open ear to us. I valued that from the president. He was always available with a phone call going in either direction. He would take in your input. The challenge was always who had the last word. But nonetheless, I think that we were able to kind of channel his energies and his instincts in the right directions. These days, you're raising a good question, whether people are being honest with him, whether they're holding back, or whether they're just not giving him good advice in some of these things. Look, there are things that he's done that I think have been really good. I favored, like closing the border, for example. And there are things where I question who's giving him the advice. And the case in point right now is Iran and the strategy there.
Secretary, I want to do a hard pivot to another topic that we are excited to talk with you about this morning, which is the issue of regulating crypto and the fate of the Clarity Act. Right now, and bear with me for a little bit of this wind-up, but I just want to make sure that we're explaining to our viewers the landscape of a topic that we don't cover all that often. But the Clarity Act is is stalled right now. There are some senators who think it could get done potentially before the August recess, but there are some hurdles that lawmakers are going to have to overcome right now, which is this proposal from Thom Tillis and Senator Gallego, who have proposed trying to now let state AGs have sole authority over the ban on federal officials issuing digital tokens, and rather than that power being vested strictly with the Attorney General, whether that be acting Attorney General Todd Blanche or a confirmed Todd Blanche. What is your position on this? And are you confident that if the bill goes through as is and the White House decides to reject this proposal that was submitted to them, that a DOJ would actually apply this rule to the president's own family?
Yeah, a lot of good questions there, a lot of good facts. Let me help the level set further as well for your audience. And of course, I come at this from a national security perspective. So to further, drill it down, of course, crypto, we're talking about digital currency. We know that over 52 million Americans, that's 1 in 5 adults, currently use this currency to do any type and number of transactions. So it's prolific out there, and it's growing, not just in the United States, but worldwide. And of course, the challenge has been, which is what brings us to the point that we're discussing this today, is that for too many years now, there's been a lack of a federal structure to guide and protect consumers, businesses, and the marketplace in general. And so the concern I've had from a national security perspective is I, of course, was responsible for the hard power side of the national security equation. But to me, soft power is equally important, whether it's, USAID that we can talk about or other things. But our financial markets and our financial system, which is built on American rails, so to speak, and which has preserved America's role as being the reserve currency, the currency of settlement, we want to protect that from China or other countries trying to dominate that. And China indeed is trying to do so. And we don't want to be under a system where the Chinese Communist Party determines who can access it. They can avoid sanctions. They can avoid supervision. So we're at this moment now where it passed by nearly 300 votes a year ago. It passed in May out of committee with bipartisan support, and we're on the cusp of this. And of course, the ethics piece is part of this. It's just a small piece of a 600-plus page bill. Look, my view is ethics provisions were put in there. Ethics are incredibly important, of course, with all government officials. But this is too important for the leadership of our country, for where we stand going forward. If we're going to dominate and lead in this technology and preserving our financial networks, our economic strength, is we got to get this bill done. And this upcoming week may be the last opportunity to do so before we lose this moment for another year or two.
I feel like you didn't address my question about that proposal specifically.
Oh, I haven't studied down to that degree in terms of the ethics thing. My view is, I'd say, again, ethics pieces are important. It's been strengthened to deal with it. It came out of committee with Republicans. And I think a Democrat or two supporting it, it just doesn't, the kind of unofficial vote count says it's not there yet. But look, my view is ethics are important. I would not hold up this bill right now because it's so important to the financial health and future of the country because of one piece of the ethics thing, frankly, focused on Trump and politics. There are other ways to deal with that. There are other fora to deal with that. I understand it's important to people. I'm not disrespecting that. But what I'm saying is we've got to get this bill moving. It's too important to our country. It's too important to America's leadership. It's too important to our national security going forward.
We should point out, Secretary Esper, that you are on the Coinbase Advisory Council just as a matter of disclosure. Before we let you go, there's one other question I need to ask you about, and that's about the upcoming midterm elections. Yesterday in the AP, Maryland's Governor Wes Moore says he's, quote, very concerned Trump will interfere in the midterm elections. Quoting the governor here, I don't think that the president is trying to hide the ball on this. It's not even am I concerned about what the president could do. I'm concerned about what he's already doing in broad daylight. Do you share the Maryland governor's concern?
Look, I think the state's obviously under the Constitution responsible for running elections. I've talked to state AGs. They feel confident they can do it. And they feel confident also if there's any attempt at federal interference that the courts will be there. Look, obviously, I think it's important to preserve our constitutional system and the norms of precedents that have been set up in the past. And I've spoken about this before. So, I think we'll be good going into this election. I think it'll be very secure. And we'll see how it ends up on the backside in early November.
former Defense Secretary Mark Esper. We will have to have you back because I think something that's interesting that I think you have a lot of views on are the shrinking stockpile in our government right now. So thank you so much for coming to the weekend.